everyone, and welcome to the BigFix briefing room. I am not your regular host. I am not Michelle McGough. My name is Rhonda Studnick Kaiser. I'm the Director of Customer Engagement for BigFix, and I'm standing in for Michelle today because she's feeling a little bit under the weather. And of course, our regular co-host, Joe Saylor, is here to take us through what's new related to Microsoft Patch Tuesday, the current vulnerabilities, and all kinds of other good stuff. So welcome, Joe. Let's take this away.
Yeah, thanks for stepping in, Rhonda. Really appreciate that. I would be very sad to monologue this whole thing.
I wouldn't do that to you, I promise.
All right, so starting off with the traditional Microsoft Patch Tuesday report here, we've got 72 total CVEs. That's by the numbers, quite a bit fewer than we usually see. And to me, the severity of them is also a fair bit lower. There's only a couple of things in here that really make me think, maybe we should consider accelerating your patch schedule. There are, however, 7 total 0 days. 5 of them are being actively exploited. We'll talk about why that's not as big a deal as it sounds like. And if you're going to accelerate anything this month, I would say it's going to be Outlook. We got another preview pane problem, and maybe your domain controllers.
All right.
So first off, let's address these actively exploited 0 days. The vast majority of them, 4 of them, are elevation of privilege from local already compromised accounts. So this requires somebody to already have an account. It can be any privilege level, any user level. And these all allow an attacker to elevate. So, these will almost certainly show up in like the very popular, the CACBot package. That's just, a giant package of vulnerabilities that a user would click and it'll just try all of them, right? That's where these things show up.
Looks good. Yeah, so, but you already have to be in a privileged situation. I mean, you have to have an account that's already been compromised. So while they're very important and we don't want them to linger and certainly want to patch it, looks like it's a little bit harder to get into the position to do this.
Yeah, these aren't really like initial compromise type vulnerabilities, nothing where like say, a user doesn't have to click on anything, you don't, or like say through a network attack vector, nothing like that. It's all, local code that has to be executed from an already compromised account.
Got it, makes sense.
And then moving on to the other of the 5 actively exploited 0 days, there's an issue in Microsoft Edge where if you were running in Internet Explorer compatibility mode and a user is tricked into clicking a malicious link, then you can activate a remote code execution vulnerability.
Is that common that we have people running? I mean, I'm guessing there are still some old tools lingering out there that are dependent on Internet Explorer underneath the covers. So maybe this is a pretty common thing, even if you're running Edge as your primary browser.
Yeah, so I think like a general user probably doesn't have this enabled, but you're right, in corporate environments, we often have these really old applications that still require some, Internet Explorer functionality. For the most part, and this will be just a good reminder to control this stuff, but for the most part, that should be controlled at the group policy level. So I would expect in, a reasonably secure configuration for this, you would have Internet Explorer set to only allow Edge set to only allow redirection to Explorer for like intranet addresses. That's probably the easiest configuration to enable. So, make sure you don't have like all internet addresses able to be redirected to Internet Explorer. That's where this would be a little more frightening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if it's internal, at least you have those, inside the firewall or inside the walls, protections already in place. So good reminder to make sure we've got those policies out there and keeping us safe.
Yep. And
I love this one.
If
What I wish
anybody,
I were doing.
yeah, right. If anybody has heard me talk about these kind of vulnerabilities before, I totally sleep on them. So this is an issue in Visual Studio where if a user is tricked into clicking on a malicious file, then you can do any sort of code execution, right? However, if I go through the trouble of like tricking a Visual Studio person into clicking on something, I probably don't need a vulnerability to do whatever I want. Like they are almost always admin users. And so it's kind of redundant to have a Visual Studio vulnerability of this type. So yeah, I mean, for sure, patch it, of course, but this doesn't, rise to the level of needing to accelerate patching for your application here, to me
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, and I think Visual Studio is one of those things that, it's not like every user in your environment is going to have Visual Studio, for the most part. So it's a less important attack vector, but certainly still, as we always say, patch, patch, patch. Make sure that you've got everything up to date, and then you don't have to worry about these things.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Danger,
So
Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson.
we got the classic Metal Gear Solid exclamation point. Hopefully someone's recognized the exact shape. Yeah, so this one so you'll notice it's only a 6.5 CVSS severity rating, which is quite low. I think that's not quite right. I think there's a bit of a mismatch here. So Microsoft Defender for Identity is a server application. It sits on top of your domain controller and makes sure your identity providing from that domain controller is secure. Like it's just a sort of an antivirus type thing, but only for identities. The issue here is that if there is an attacker that's positioned very close to your domain controller, and it has to be on the same subnet, so very, very close, then they can spoof the identity of the Defender sensor service. The vulnerability itself says that it's only confidentiality, meaning that you lose the protection of your data. So only information leaks. It says there's no integrity vulnerability and no availability vulnerability, meaning that we can't run code and we can't take the service down.
Okay.
But the exclamation point here is because confidentiality on a service that protects your identities, to me, seems like they're second order effects. So I
Yeah.
would be very, very worried about the kind of data that comes out of this when the confidentiality is compromised.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, this seems way more important than it looks. I hope I'm wrong. It is kind of hard to exploit, right? The actual complexity of the exploit is not difficult, but being right next to a domain controller, like you got to have you have to be in the data center, right? Like physically
Right.
in the data center to get on there. So I think it'll be hard to get to, but I think the consequences are greater than it looks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, definitely something to maybe accelerate just to be sure that you're ultra squeaky clean here, but yeah, maybe a little bit harder to get to it. So yeah.
All right, that's the end of our 0 days for the month. Moving on to a couple of criticals. These ones are two of the same vulnerabilities, just on different sides of the equation. One is the desktop client and one is the desktop gateway. This is essentially a vulnerability where a malicious server can serve remote code execution to a remote desktop client. So if you're tricked into connecting to a malicious remote desktop server with the remote desktop client, then you can have your stuff exploited and lose all your passwords.
So machine in the middle attacks. I'm sure you've talked about this before. In fact, I'm sure you've talked to me about this before. But if people don't know what that means, let's go through it one more time. Cliff's Notes version.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really easy, a really clear vector for a machine in the middle attack, meaning that We like spoof your address or put a machine in between your real remote desktop server and a malicious one. So imagine a situation where an attacker is on your network, maybe not in the data center, but in your network somewhere, and then they're able to set up like maybe a tiny Raspberry Pi device, right? Maybe they plug that into a physical jack in your network, and then they just give it the same name as your actual remote desktop server, and then you enter in a situation where maybe a client that's connecting to what they think is the right address connects to this malicious device instead because it has the same name.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, patch away, people, patch away.
So
Preview pane.
I'm mad about this. It seems like almost every month Office has had a issue with, this is the vulnerability this time as well, has had an issue with opening some sort of maliciously crafted document causes any sort of malicious code to be executed. And yeah, that requires a user to be tricked, except that in every one of these cases, the preview pane has always been vulnerable to the same vulnerability. So if you it could be zero click, right? If somehow it gets through your email filters and it is the first email in your inbox, you could theoretically open up Outlook and have it just burn your system to the ground with no further clicks.
Right.
And those always make me the most worried, where anything that circumvents our natural defense mechanisms, those are the scariest because they're the most likely to be executed.
Right. Okay, so email filters and also information security training. Let's hope that all your people know not to click on random stuff. Please don't click on random stuff.
Yes, for sure. All right, and that is the end of our Patch Tuesday overview. Not particularly scary this month. Again, the domain controllers probably, like if I had something if I needed to pick something to accelerate, domain controllers for sure, and also get those Outlook patches out there if you're still using on-prem Outlook.
Yeah, makes sense. So what juicy stories did you bring us this week?
It's really kind of a one story in two acts.
Oh, okay.
The first half of this one, CISA has had all sorts of, let's say, turmoil.
Turmoil is a
In
good
the
word.
recent past. Yeah, a little bit of turmoil. The last 2 days worth of turmoil have been just really interesting. So on May 12th, 2 days ago, as of this recording, I don't know when it's going to be posted, they actually changed all of the notifications that would normally show up on the website for like urgent security related items to only be available through X and an email distribution list. So, essentially making everything a social media post rather than, something available on their website. There was a huge blowback to that, of course. No one was happy about having to subscribe to X to get their security notifications. So they rolled that back, but now there's like this big, like open question mark, like what are they going to do now?
Mm-hmm. Well, turmoil is the name of the game, I guess. Uh, so I guess the key takeaway for this one is to be apprised of what's going on, via I guess the news media and your trusted sources of information security news that you can use, and stay apprised of what you're going to need to do with respect to staying aware of what CISA has added to their list. Now, we, of course, have our CISA CAB content, and we will continue to be able to get the right information to continue to provide you with that content from BigFix. That is a special category of content that we have out there for certain users. But yeah, I guess just stay in touch with those people and places that tell you the good things to know, and yeah, follow accordingly. We'll see how it goes from here. By tomorrow, it could be entirely different.
Yeah. And to add maybe a tiny bit more context for anyone who wasn't paying attention, last month, maybe 3, 4 weeks ago, CISA also almost lost their funding entirely and kind of got re-signed at the last second. So there's just been a lot of stuff going on here, which leads directly into Act 2 of this particular story. I'm sure the timing here is completely coincidental, absolutely unrelated. But the European Union just yesterday released the first version of their very own vulnerability database. So the organization is called ENISA, not to be confused with the pop singer, and I'm sure they're going to have to fight to the death over who gets to keep that name. We'll see who wins. We'll see who wins. Yeah, so their website, it's in beta. It definitely looks pretty bare bones. I probably should have had a screenshot of it here. But essentially, they've created a whole new system for mapping IDs to vulnerabilities. They call it the EUVD. It's an ID system, looks a lot like CVE IDs. But they are planning on maintaining mapping between their EUVD and the CVE. So that's all mapped in there. They are actively soliciting feedback. I for sure will be dropping some in there, but now is the time. If you ever had any sort of like, I don't know, vulnerability idea in the maybe CVSS scoring space or the just CV design space, like now's the time to drop that in there.
Got it. All right. Yeah. I guess we'll see. It's good to have some diversity of information out there. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, good to know that it's out there.
Yeah, look forward to seeing where it ends up. I'm
Right.
all for having multiple sources of this kind of data. So I think that should strengthen the community as a whole, even if CISA manages to survive the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I suppose another sort of tangential kind of thing thinking about it is that the EU does have a lot of like specific data privacy and other kinds of requirements that are unique to their organization. So this may be a place where if you're trying to keep up, as we see it develop, it may be a place where you can keep up with some of those EU requirements. Like they may have a different perspective on a vulnerability because of those protections that they expect to be in place. So it'll be good to see how this evolves over time.
Yeah, that seems likely.
Awesome.
All right, that's it
Something
for this
new.
story. We got something
Something
new.
new.
Yeah, this isn't new as in the last couple of days. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, but in case you hadn't noticed, the BigFix Reports patch performance playlist is now live. It has a bunch more graphs. We'll call them graphs than what I have shown here. But it's there for you to play with. Got all sorts of interesting data to look at, and allows you to kind of cut stuff up into like different views. So should be really interesting to take a look at. Give us feedback. We're still making active changes on all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that we definitely would love to hear perspectives on. Jog on over to the forum if you've played with it, if you see things, have some conversations on this front. One of the things that we want to do is make it so that we can, see those higher level orders of information, outside of something like web reports where you really have to go and craft it and make it, more in depth. So providing you maybe more quasi-management level information, I think is something that we're really striving to do with the capability, because so many of us who are working in these spaces and operations and patching operations and security operations need to be able to reflect information up to our management. So if we can give you those great visualizations that you don't have to work so hard for, that's what we're about. So we really want your perspectives on this.
I am mostly about dark mode. It just makes me so happy that it's got a dark mode. My eyes are so much happier.
Yeah, I think that is a very popular conversation topic when we talk about the future of BigFix UI, and being able to have dark mode is high on everybody's priority list.
I'm not trying to get blinded here. I don't need a white background.
There you go.
Not about that.
Awesome. All right, Joe. Well, is there anything else we wanted to chat about today?
That is everything. Thank you
All
so much for
right.
helping us out here, Rhonda.
Yeah, I'm glad to step in. Maybe I'll make a cameo appearance maybe once a quarter just to kind of give you guys a break. But thanks for pulling all this together, Joe, and thanks to Michelle for being your usual co-host. I'm happy to step in today, and we'll get this out. And oh, I guess I could tease that we are going to start making this briefing room content available in podcast form. So we'll have a link to the video. So if you want to go look at the video, you can do that. But if you're out walking the dog or taking a hike or I don't know, laying on the hammock and listening to random podcasts, you can definitely follow our Endpoint Management Today podcast. This will probably be out in 2 weeks time from now, but we'll have it out there and we'll start making it available so you have another venue to find our BigFix briefing room. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and happy patching.